Ember app contains it all, your templates big and sometimes small. Learn routers, routes, components to let Ember models work for you. Controllers to help decorate the views which you can integrate. Mix them together in December, warming up with Ember.
You are warming up with Ember.js, and this is level 4, where we're going to be talking about acorn models and pinecone data. In the previous level, we learned about Ember routes and loaded in some data from a JavaScript array. But what if we wanted to fetch these products from a server? Well, that's where we're going to be getting to at the end of this level, but there's a couple things you need to learn about before we get there, starting with the Ember model. So the Ember model is a class that defines the properties and behavior of the data that you present to the user. And, well, every route can have a model. Previously, we set this model to a JavaScript array. On our chart, you can see that the model appears under the route because it's the route that tells the controller what model to use. And that also gets rendered out in the template. In programming language terms, you might think of a model as a class. In our case, we're working with products. So we're going to have a product model, and that class is going to allow us to create many instances of products that might have different values. Models are typically nouns, just like the typical class, and we create one just like you see here. We also need to tell our model what attributes it contains, just like you would set attributes on a class. So remember our product data? We need to take a look at that and figure out what data types our model should expect. Are there strings, numbers, booleans, dates? What are each of those attributes? Let's go ahead and define the different properties in our model definition. You can see that we have a title, which is a string, price, which is a number, description, which is a string, is on sale, which is a boolean, and then finally an image, which is also a string. It's a good practice to define the different data types that your model properties have. However, it's not required. If the property types aren't supplied like this, they'll be implied by Ember. Typically, Ember models will use another library called Ember Data. They don't have to, but most of them will, because Ember Data makes it easy to use models to retrieve records from a server, cache them for performance, save updates back to the server, and create new records on the client. The Ember Data component, of course, sits under the model in our chart. Ember Data has different adapters you can use to load in data. The first allows you to communicate with an HTTP server using JSON. That is the REST adapter. This is the default adapter for Ember Data. The second allows you to load records from memory. This is the fixture adapter. And this is what we're going to use in our application, so we can just load data right there from the page itself into models. Fixtures are also great if you're creating an application from scratch and you don't have a backend to connect it with yet. We need to slightly modify our JavaScript array with our data in it so it can become a fixture. To do this, it needs to use the fixtures constant within the model, so we call app.product.fixtures. We also need to give each product a unique ID. All models in Ember need to have a unique ID. Ember Data has this notion of a store. It's a central repository for all records in your application available in routes and controllers. You can think of it as a cache store for all your records, right? So inside of that store is the fixtures we just created. And we'll use the store to set and retrieve records. To use Ember Data in our application, we need to make some small tweaks to our app. First of all, inside of our router, instead of using the dynamic segment title, we need to switch to using the product ID as the dynamic segment. This is because Ember Data, again, needs a unique identifier. And potentially, we could have multiple products with the same title. Next, we need to update our routes to get our fixture data out of the store. So here, instead of returning app products, we're going to return this.store find all product, which will return all the product models. Next, since we're no longer using a JavaScript array, to fetch a particular product, we're going to call this.store find product and then pass in the parameter product ID, which we'll get from the URL passed in. Ember is full of intelligent defaults, and here's another one of them. If this is the behavior we want inside our product route to find a specific product with the product ID we pass in, then, well, we don't need to specify it at all. We don't need any of this code, and it's going to find the proper product based on the product ID. So now, if we jump back over to our server, we can click around, call up a Flint, call up Kindling. You'll notice it's now using the ID. We can refresh, and it all works. Let's try building some models with fixtures in the challenges, and I'll see you in the next section.